Welcome to Football Conspiracies.
I'm Jared Cole.
And I'm Jared Rabinovich.
This week's episode, The Chunky Soup Curse, Part 2.
There's no sugarcoating it. I fucked up. I'm the only one to blame. I'm not only the buck, but I'm also where it stops. My indiscretion began last week when writing an episode I was not only proud about, but was prideful about. I should have known this would be my undoing. After all, as King Solomon so wisely instructed me when I was a mere child, his muscular hand resting on my prepubescent shoulder, pride goeth before the fall. The thing about pride is, it makes you forget about the fall. The date was August 10th, 2024. Picture me, a normal guy, 6'5", finance, trust fund, blue eyes, sitting down to humbly write last week's episode, The Chunky Soup Curse. Upon discovering the topic of the episode, my excitement levels were reminiscent to those of Constable Charles d'Albret and the rest of the French army on the morning of St. Crispin's Day, 1415, when they arrived at the battlefield of Agincourt to find themselves far outnumbering the English army of King Henry V. Little did I know how quickly my kismet would change, just as Constable d'Albret's did on that fateful morning. With this excitement came my indiscretion. I failed in my duty to you, my dear listeners, to perform the due diligence worthy of such an important topic. When I found ChunkySoupCurse.com, a website which recently had attention brought to it by one of the world's most popular podcasts, much like Louis Braille, I lost all sight. It is now I offer myself to the whims of the masses, feed my body to the carrion crows, burn me in effigy alongside Guy Fawkes, tie me to a post and block my ears. Enduring all of this and more would still not suffice as an apology for the misinformation I ignorantly stuffed down the gullets of this beautiful listening audience. I ask only one thing, for my foolishness to serve as a lesson to those who come after me, as I do not expect to be forgiven, only to be an example. Alright, so most of you guys are probably pretty confused about what all that was about.
I'm gonna be cutting it there anyway. What the fuck?
Is my apology. I think it was necessary.
I fully accept your apology.
I appreciate that. We'll see if the audience feels the same way.
Yes, I hope they do. I would have... The second I came across ChunkySoupCurse.com, was it?
Yes.
I would have stopped research altogether and just fallen down this rabbit hole. So.
Well, yeah. Let me explain to the audience a bit about what that was. You guys are probably a little confused about what that was about. After the release of last week's episode, J. Cole did a little more digging himself on the topic of the Chunky Soup Curse. J. Cole, can you explain to the audience what you found?
Okay, so basically when I got home, I wanted to see who the other players were, part of the Chunky Soup Curse, and so I just did my research and I found a link to a guy, his own website, who claimed to be the founder for the Chunky Soup Curse.
Yes, that's the basics of it. It turns out in my excitement after finding the website, I began to ignore some other relevant sources which would have informed me, and I had my facts confused. Well, I don't want to take away anything from John, the notorious name or pseudonym, who knows, of the creator of ChunkySoupCurse.com. I did mistake him for the originator of the curse as a whole, rather than just the founder of the website dedicated to the curse. It turns out, as J. Cole discovered, that the curse was actually created by a man named Dan Lewis. And a quick note, I just want to say, it's actually pretty odd to find the original creator of an NFL conspiracy taking full credit for it. Other times on this podcast, when I spoke about the creators of conspiracies, it has almost always been in a speculative manner. For example, when speaking about the Super Bowl logo conspiracy, I posited my theory that the curse originated with the Twitter account at NFL_memes. This claim, however, is simply a hypothesis of mine. But this is the first time, as J. Cole found, a man fully taking credit for this curse.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked when I saw that someone actually claimed it, and that once it started getting media attention, this guy was like, oh, this is me, like, look at me.
Exactly. Like, as I discovered in my research on this guy and this origination of the curse, I actually learned that he is a sports writer, and it's kind of like a draw that he uses in his general, like, online resume. He says, like, oh, I'm the creator of this big thing that caught on. This is why you should hire me to write for your publication.
You know what? You talked at the end of last week's episode about how John was this whole satirical guy just trying to, like, make a joke at the conspiracy theorists in the NFL who take it so seriously. Maybe this John guy is just making fun of Dan.
Well, Dan Lewis definitely is coming from it from a very satirical angle, too. It's clearly a joke to him as well.
Okay.
Yeah, but John just kind of took his idea and ran with it.
Yeah.
It seems like that situation. People are probably wondering how I can claim this for certain. Like I mentioned briefly, there is another website that mentions the Chunky Soup Curse a little bit before ChunkySoupCurse.com ever came online. Actually, 4 years before ChunkySoupCurse.com ever came online. This webpage is called dlewis.net. There is a section on his website titled Chunky Curse. The first section on this page is titled The Chunky Soup Curse, a History. This is what the section says. dlewis.net is responsible for independently discovering and, more importantly, popularizing the curse of Chunky Soup. Instead of giving a rundown, here are the posts that talk about the curse, link, and other info. So that is him showing that he created it, and under that there are a handful of entries speaking about the curse and the first people afflicted by it that we mostly spoke about in the last episode.
Yeah, because I'm sure a lot more people have been hit by the curse since 2002, but you were saying that the 3 most prominent figures came in that 2002 season.
Exactly, so. That's right, which makes a lot more sense looking back on the origination of this curse. It makes a lot more sense that it came about in 2002 rather than 2006, someone digging through history.
Yeah.
You may also be asking yourself now, anyone can create a website and lie on the internet. How can you be sure this is truly your man? And that is a fair question, but I can say with a pretty high level of confidence that this is the true creator and not some fraud. How do I know this? People far smarter than I have already done the work for me. Both the Philadelphia Inquirer and MSNBC have quoted this website and Dan Lewis, the website's creator, as the origin point of the Chunky Soup Curse. Dan Lewis's website as a whole is not dedicated to the Chunky Soup Curse. As a matter of fact, it is just a writer's website used to display his bona fides. Lewis, like I mentioned, is a sports writer, and like many other writers, he used the website to display his chops. This website, in many ways, is just a virtual resume for him. This helps explain why so much more attention has been brought to John and ChunkySoupCurse.com. ChunkySoupCurse.com, while it may not be the birthplace of the Chunky theory, it makes the most entertaining and compelling case for the curse's existence. As a matter of fact, on dlewis.net, the entire page covering the curse only has 6 updates, all posted between September and November of 2002. There's even a disclaimer at the top, which says, for updates about the curse, including Ben Roethlisberger's injury, please see this link. Unfortunately, the reference link leads to an empty page on Armchair GM Wiki. I was unable to find the link through the Wayback Machine.
Damn, so the Wayback Machine can only do so much.
It can only do so much. When there's a lost link, you really need a little bit more information to find what you need on Wayback, unfortunately. Don't get me wrong, would never come after Wayback.
No, I'm sure they'll come in handy a lot further in this podcast.
They have before and they will again. That being said, I was able to find a page dedicated to the Chunky Soup Curse on the Armchair GM Wiki. This may or may not be the page that this link originally led to. I cannot be sure and likely never will be sure. And this page appears to not have been updated for many years. Probably around the 2008 era was the last time it had any sort of activity on it. For this reason, alongside the quality of writing and sheer entertainment levels, when discussing the curse, I will continue to use ChunkySoupCurse.com as my main source. In my humble opinion, it has far and away the largest volume of information, the most recent information, and the most entertaining information on the topic of the Chunky Soup Curse. And I think you guys probably agree with that, only based on last episode. And like I've said, we've barely scratched the surface.
Yeah, no, ChunkySoupCurse.com is definitely a top-tier website for information and a very trustworthy source. It's gospel.
Undoubtedly. He's one of the apostles. We've gone over this. Maybe that's more fitting than the Mount Rushmore we've been using. Maybe now that we have John, it's the apostles of the NFL conspiracies. I like it.
Yeah, NFL memes and John.
Exactly.
The apostles sitting with Jesus.
Exactly. We have 10 more spots. It gives us more space to work with than The Mount Rushmore analogy does. Before moving on, I do want to thank Dan Lewis for his incredible contribution to the world of NFL conspiracies. You truly are a trailblazer, and I have the utmost respect for your craft. Once again, if you want to talk, we're always here.
Yeah, I would be very interested to find out how you decided to piece all these pieces together.
Yeah, like I'd love to pick his brain. Was this just something that he came up with one night writing alone? Was he messing around with his buddies? Did he have any beef with Campbell's Soup on a personal level? I have no idea, and I'd love to know. So if you want to come on for an interview, let us know, Dan. The inbox is open.
You know what? Coming up with one of these conspiracies, I don't know, maybe Dan deserves a spot as an apostle.
He may. Like, the Chunky Soup curse, well, it is John who ended up flying with it and truly making it the beautiful creation that I love so much. It would have never happened without Dan Lewis and his work, you know? He laid the groundwork for what John would turn into the Mecca.
So Dan is like the Moses?
Dan is like the Moses almost, if we want to continue on this biblical route. For the remainder of this episode, we'll be speaking about some of the victims of the Chunky Soup curse who we did not get a chance to speak about last week. On last week's episode, we touched upon the best recognized cases of players being afflicted by the curse. These cases are considered the foundation of this theory and are the main talking points people go to when speaking about the Chunky curse. These players were Terrell Davis, Kurt Warner, Donovan McNabb, Brian Urlacher, Michael Strahan, Reggie White, and Ben Roethlisberger. However, I did leave one player out who can be considered a main character in this theory, largely because he was also afflicted in the 2002 season alongside McNabb, Urlacher, and Strahan. The reason I left this out may also have a little bit to do with the screw up I made in not properly finding the source of this theory to begin with, because when you go to Dan Lewis's website and read the webpage for that, he very, very clearly talks about the case of Jerome Bettis. But I do not in my last episode, and it's because John actually doesn't speak about it on the main page of his website. So that's why I missed it.
I'm surprised why John didn't touch on it, though.
He does have articles about it, and we will be quoting from that shortly. But originally, he didn't include it in the main curse page where he really breaks down his thesis. And he has so many articles that I wasn't going to go through to find each and every one. So Jerome Bettis kind of slipped through the cracks, even though he does fall in this 2002 class of players who were affected by the curse.
Okay, let's hear it.
So like I said, this person is Jerome Bettis, running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is how John, the writer of ChunkySoupCurse.com, explains Bettis' struggles with the curse in an article titled The Mark of the Bettis, 666 and Chunky Soup. J. Cole, would you like to read this quote?
Despite playing 13 games in 2002, Bettis was hobbled all season long and suffered from several nagging injuries. In its first audacious public announcement, Chunky Soup used Jerome Bettis to leave an ominous calling card, 666, the mark of the beast. Jerome Bettis ended his 2002 season with 666 rushing yards. It was Chunky's boldest and cruelest announcement to date. Chunky broke a streak of 6 consecutive 1,000-yard rushing seasons and then slapped the mark of the beast on Jerome Bettis. Bettis would lose his starting job to Amos Zeroui.
This isn't the end of the Jerome Bettis story. After this, he would continue to endorse Campbell's Chunky Soup, and he would not be given back his starting position as the Steelers running back ever after this moment. In what John considers to be Chunky's last swing at Bettis, here is what happened.
Chunky Soup is a mean bitch. Know this, and act with this knowledge. Chunky Soup placed Jerome Bettis at the goal line on a clinching drive against the Colts in 2005. In a purely Chunky moment, Bettis, who had not fumbled all year, was met by a linebacker. The ball coated in Chunky Soup slipped out of Bettis' hand. Only a game-saving tackle by Ben Roethlisberger, another player coated in Chunky Curse, saved the day. Bettis would survive the fumble and go on to win a ring, courtesy of the sloppiest Super Bowl played since the implementation of the forward pass.
So what do you think of Bettis' journey with the curse?
He won a Super Bowl while afflicted by the curse.
And
so,
yes,
that's all we need to say.
We are about to get into that. I think that's probably the most obvious observation, and I'm glad that you pointed it out, because I think that maybe more than any other example we've covered in the past couple episodes, this exemplifies just how silly and unconventional this curse is.
I will say, though, he did fumble the ball.
In the
goal
playoffs.
line in the playoffs. That's if what John's saying is actually true here. Are we taking
What John is saying is true here.
Okay.
I can confirm that these facts are true.
Okay,
A lot
so
of what he
then-
says is bullshit, but that
No, that's why I had to just
exactly.
check real quick.
To clarify for the audience, usually I'll point out if there's any discrepancies, but usually when John is talking about what happened to the player, that is true. How it happened is complete garbage.
Okay.
And the motivations behind it, that's all chunky lore. But what actually happened is usually what actually happened. Bettis did come in with a 666-yard season after several consecutive 1,000-plus yard season.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's weird, right? Maybe he's the one who made the deal with the devil.
Chunky is the third party on that deal, apparently.
I guess you're right. I mean,
Or maybe Chunky is the devil.
I think that's more accurate. I think that's what John would like to hear. So just like J. Cole was mentioning, this is a pretty flimsy example of the curse. This 2005 playoffs that were just mentioned as a part of Chunky's final hindrance to Bettis' career ended with the Steelers, Bettis' team, winning the Super Bowl. Following this season, Bettis would retire, and 10 years later, in 2015, would be inducted into the Hall of Fame. I don't know if you've had this experience too, J. Cole, but I don't think it's common for us to be speaking about someone who's cursed on this show and puts up a Hall of Fame numbers during that exact same period.
Yeah, no, that's not a cursed player in my opinion.
As far as I'm concerned, one fumble at an inopportune time and one poor season is not really a curse, but that's all that John needs to go fly, or really Dan Lewis in this situation.
I mean, he can go cry in his gold jacket wearing his Super Bowl ring.
Exactly. Like, I really don't feel bad for him.
No, he is not a cursed player as far as I'm concerned.
Yes, I would care to agree with that valuation. However, in my opinion, this only adds to the satirical value of John's writings. In true conspiracist fashion, John ignores the overarching story of Bettis' illustrious career to instead find the few and far between instances that may be attributed to his being cursed and targeted by Chunky in order to prove his argument. Very conspiracist coded of him. That makes a lot of sense.
Of course, that's how conspiracy theorists work. They take what works and they keep it and they discard what doesn't work.
Exactly. It's really just an example of him throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. And that is exactly how conspiracists act. This is how conspiracies are written, and so many of the things that we've covered on this show are written. They completely ignore the overarching story and they zero in on what makes the most sense. We can go back to our first episode, the Super Bowl logo conspiracy, and think about how deep people had to dig just for some sort of meaning, and really there was nothing there to begin with. This is just a more overwrought version of that. So we'll now move on to the next athlete we'll be covering. And this is going to be a bit off the beaten path, as he is not even an NFL player. This person is Mats Sundin, a former member of the NHL's Toronto Maple Leafs, my home team, and I remember him playing for the team when I was just a kid and just getting into hockey.
Leafs legend, Mats Sundin. Since you mentioned the Toronto Maple Leafs, I saw this thing. It was very conspiracy coded. I wasn't going to bring it up, but because you brought up the Leafs, I kind of have to.
For sure.
JJ McCarthy just got injured. He was going to be the starting quarterback for the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah.
And apparently this injury is going to lead to Toronto Maple Leafs winning the Stanley Cup.
I would love to know how.
So he only ever played one game with Minnesota.
Yeah.
And it was a preseason game. And the Leafs had a guy who wore number 9 in their preseason in 1967, the last time the Leafs won a cup, who also only played one preseason game, and he wore the number 9. And JJ McCarthy is a really big hockey fan.
So why isn't it the Vikings who are going to win the Super Bowl?
Because it's the Leafs that are going to end their drought. That's just what this is the Instagram video that I can't find is about.
As a Leafs fan who has suffered more heartbreak than I can bear, that gives me zero hope, and I won't let that get me out of my slump.
Yeah, I wouldn't let it get me out of my slump either.
So I think the inclusion of Sundin in this theory goes to show just how much of a fishing expedition John was on. Regardless of all of that, here is the case that John laid out for Mats Sundin. J. Cole, do you want to take this?
Now, it's no surprise the NHL is a great racket for Campbell's. As Canadians continue to pretend global warming isn't bothering them, they need hot food to pretend that it's still cold in Canada. Enter Mats Sundin. Not a Canadian, a Swede. So if Chunky smacks him up, he at least has socialized healthcare systems to fall back on. Matt Sundin knew that combating Chunky required boldness, so he took his Chunky Soup endorsement and bought a horse. A racehorse for about $800,000. Not a bad plan. Like all bullies, Chunky Soup respects boldness. For a while. Then, in 2005, like Neptune rising the sea to destroy Atlantis, Chunky Soup assaulted with all its might. Chunky Soup knew that killing a hockey-playing gambler would take something profound. It went for it. Chunky Soup smashed his lower orbital bone.
Personally, I find this story about Matt Sundin to be very funny for a few reasons. One, like I said, it just shows how far-reaching John was willing to go in order to prove the Chunky Soup curse. But also, I couldn't find the Chunky Soup commercial that starred Sundin, but I have been developing a little bit of hypothesis that it came out at least a few years before he was injured in 2005. Sundin was in the prime of his careers in the late 90s. By 2005, he was already a pretty washed-up player. He was only 3 years from retirement. But I have no confirmation of this fact.
Damn, that's some more lost media. If anyone knows where we can find the Matt Sundin Chunky Soup commercial, that'd be dope.
There's like 4 Reddit threads looking for it. No one can find it. It's
really?
Like, yeah, like I'm sure it's somewhere, but yeah, like it seems like pretty lost right now. And I would love to see it because a lot of people are talking about how great it is. People are like, oh, this is his best ever ad placement.
Maybe they're just like hyping up because they know no one can find it. So they're like, oh my god, it's crazy good.
No, it's interesting. It's like literally on lists of good commercials hockey players have been in and stuff. Like it's clearly well liked and well regarded, well remembered.
Huh.
Yeah. And while we were going down this rabbit hole, I also thought it might be interesting to see if his racehorse, which was bought using the dirty chunky money, had also fell victim to the curse. The answer was a definite no. As a matter of fact, Rotation, as they decide to name the horse for some reason.
Not bad name. I don't mind it.
I think it's pretty boring as far as you can go.
Yeah, for a horse, that's...
It's pretty lame, considering there's things like American Pharaoh. You know, that's kind of way more badass.
Yeah, but I mean, not every horse can be an American Pharaoh.
That's fair, but every horse can be like a secretariat. I don't know. I think Rotation's lame. Either way, Rotation had an incredibly successful career on the circuit. Absolutely was not touched by this curse, and the fact that Chunky Money bought him meant nothing to this horse. He was just pounding away.
No, love to hear it.
And also, while we're on the topic, I need to ask you, have you been hearing this whole debate about whether the horses should get the medal in the equestrian events in the Olympics?
100% they should.
I completely agree. It's not even a question to me that they are the ones deserving of the medal, rather than some like old aristocrat.
Yeah, some guy who's sitting on the horse. The horse is doing all the work.
Exactly,
right?
Yeah. Like, it's crazy. I heard another podcaster say something along the lines of, it's medal welfare for aristocrats, which I thought was a pretty good descriptor of it. Now we'll be moving on to the last player we'll be covering on today's episode, and that is Matt Hasselbeck, who is the former quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks. Once again, we are going to be turning to John to describe the nature of Hasselbeck's struggle with the curse. J. Cole, want to take over?
Matt Hasselbeck knew early on that the curse meant business. Not long after signing with Chunky, the most vile fluid not injected by characters in a Tarantino film, the curse attacked him. The attack led to the development of tendonitis in his foot. This was compounded when fellow Seahawks backfield mate Sean Alexander decided to take on the Madden curse in the same year. Sure, Donovan McNabb had survived both curses in the same year, but Donovan McNabb didn't play for the defunct CFL team that had been sold to the NFL to pay off debts from building the Calgary Saddledome. Then Week 7 hit. With Sean Alexander already on life support, the Chunky Soup curse needed help from another Seahawks running back. It got that help from Max Strong, made famous by his yellow Max Strong wristbands, encouraging kids to pimp life out to the fullest every day. Strong blocked Vikings linebacker E.J. Henderson into Hasselbeck, causing an MCL sprain in Hasselbeck's leg. 4 weeks later, Hasselbeck returned to the life of pain that is endorsing Campbell's Chunky Soup. By season's end, Hasselbeck has broken fingers and a broken rib, and he had to play for a coach who looks like a cat. The offseason was no better for Hasselbeck. He had surgery to repair a torn labrum in his left shoulder. All right, Jared, do you know who this cat-faced coach is?
I believe it is Mike Holmgren.
Okay, do you have a picture?
Yeah, I'll pull it up right now.
Yeah, that dude is certified cat.
He's not like the normal cat that you see, like he wouldn't be a cat roaming the road or anything. Definitely not an outdoor cat. Kind of like...
No, that is an indoor cat for sure.
This guy's owned by the aristocracy. This guy's owned by the same guy who rides horses for equestrian. This guy's owned by the same guy who rides rotation. We digress. In terms of Hasselbeck's story given out by John, it actually seems to me like by far the most compelling case we've spoken about yet. In 2007, Hasselbeck led the Seahawks to their fourth consecutive divisional title, while putting up 3,966 passing yards with a passer rating of 91.4. He was also selected for his third Pro Bowl. However, in 2008, he suffered a back injury during the preseason, and the rest of his season would be plagued by other injuries, one including a head-on-head collision with another player, which put him out for a while. Apparently, it was pretty brutal. Sometime in 2007, about halfway through the season he performed really well in, is when Hasselbeck's association with Chunky began. While he did manage to play out the rest of the 2007 season while putting up career-high numbers, his ill luck began, on a relative scale, soon after taking up his endorsement. As far as the Chunky Soup curse goes, this is an undeniable piece of proof.
Yeah, this is very compelling for the theory.
The issue is, he got endorsed in, I believe, week 7 or week 8 of that 2007 year. So it was a bit of a delayed curse, but in terms of the delays we've seen, including like Matt Sundins, who potentially waited like 6 to 7 years, this is pretty good. It seems to me like the most compelling thing you could put in front of me, or hasn't put in front of me yet, proving this curse. Does that make sense?
100%.
I know it's not totally satisfactory, and it doesn't satisfy me at all, but the writing of John does satisfy me, and I will continue going back to that well endlessly. For the time being, this will be the end of our exploration into the Chunky Soup curse. In the future, we plan on having more episodes covering the remainder of the victims, people who have dodged the curse, as well as a deep dive into the archives of ChunkySoupCurse.com, the gift that keeps on giving. But for now, I think it's a good idea to get back to our regularly scheduled programming before we find ourselves too far down this rabbit hole, because I fear us at this point, with my obsession going this way, ending up the ChunkySoupCurse.com podcast, and that isn't what we came on this mission to deliver to you, dear audience.
No, we will definitely be coming back to Chunky Soup Curse, I'm sure,
Absolutely.
But maybe in a little bit.
Yeah, we're gonna have to take a bit of a break. I think you guys, the audience, deserve a little more substantive theories and maybe something you could take a little bit more away from than just the silliness of what John has given us. Before ending off, I just want to quickly speak about what I think is truly magical about the Chunky Soup curse, and why it delights me that it has garnered so much attention. And that is, it's because it's a clear case of manufactured tragedy that no one has actually been harmed by. So much manufactured tragedy, especially as we can see in the past 5 to 10 years with so much misinformation, disinformation going around, has really hurt people and torn families apart and had really detrimental effects on society. But this sort of thing is just like a loving, harmless prank that hasn't hurt anyone.
Except for Ben Roethlisberger.
When it comes to this theory, you have to look through a very specific lens if you want any chance of actually sympathizing with John's view, which I find unlikely anyone really does. After all, theories like the Madden curse make a lot more logical sense, especially upon first look. The player is on the cover one year, they are injured or underperform the next. However, the Chunky Soup curse does not preclude a player from performing well or even winning a championship, nor does it affect the player on any defined timeline. Rather, Dan Lewis and John have found players who endorse Chunky, find any bad thing to happen to them in the following years of their life, ignore the positive aspects of their career, and claim Chunky has got it out for them. So, it's obviously a joke that we're covering, and this is clearly a piece of satire, but like I said, I like something substantive to come out of every episode, and I hope that the listeners are able to bring home at least a little bit of a lesson from all the rot I've just filled their brains with.
Alrighty, welcome listeners to my segment of the podcast where I delve deep into the bizarre and unexplained occurrences that make you question the reality that is the NFL. I've got some mind-bending stories and stats that will have you reaching for your tinfoil hat in no time. It all went down week 14, 2001. The Cleveland Browns, who are desperate for a playoff spot, are facing off against the Jacksonville Jaguars. In a close game, with seconds ticking down, the Browns thought they had converted a crucial fourth down play to get the first. But then, chaos.
Okay.
After the Browns had completed a pass and then spiked the ball to stop the clock, the officials huddled, then announced a review of the catch. Confusion turned to outrage as the call was overturned, giving the ball to the Jags. Browns fans, especially the infamous Dog Pound, were not having it. Beer bottles rained down on the field, some even containing full beers thanks to the new plastic bottle design. Players and refs scrambled for cover, some even getting hit by the bottles.
No way.
The scene was wild. The ref, Terry McAuley, made the unprecedented call to end the game early. But wait, there's more. The league office stepped in, forcing the teams back out on the field to finish the game. The Jaguars anticlimactically kneeled it down to secure a 15-10 victory.
I mean, I know it's silly, but I kind of agree with the head office there. You got to play out the game, right? I know it's just a kneel.
I agree playing out the game, but this call is crazy.
The call is insane. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know why you would ever take back... Like, why did they take back the touchdown? I'm confused.
No, it was a first down.
Oh, why did they take back the first down?
The Browns were forced to convert a 4th and 2. The quarterback took the snap and passed it to Quincy Morgan, caught the ball for a 3-yard gain. First down. Morgan appeared to bobble the football. Officials called it a complete pass. Couch hurried the offense to the line of scrimmage and spiked the ball with 48 seconds remaining. The officials announced that they would review the 4th down conversion 2 plays earlier.
You can't just go back 2 plays and... I have so many issues with this call. They go back 2 plays to review something that, by the sounds of this article at least, doesn't sound like a very controversial call. Like a 3-yard gain on a 4 and 2, that's a first down. You kneel it, the game's over.
Yeah, 100%. Like, it's you made the call that it was a catch, and if they get a playoff, then it resets. You shouldn't be able to look at 2 plays back. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Like, I understand the temptation to take back the call, but it's simply too late. That's just how sports work, you know? If someone doesn't call it on time, I mean, you saw what happened with the bronze medalist gymnast in America. I don't know if you saw this, that she got her medal taken away from her, and the coach appealed that he challenged within the right amount of time, and they say he didn't. It's a very similar situation, it feels like.
It's unprecedented, but I don't know if that's the same, because for the US one, it was unprecedented, but she was off. Like, if there is a time limit and you weren't within
apparently
the
they
time,
weren't.
I thought they were like...
There's video
for a
proof
second.
there's video proof of the coach coming in seconds before the time limit. They had 60 seconds and he came in before.
Okay, then it's different.
And they didn't allow her to repeal.
Okay, so then it is exactly the same. I didn't know that was that
yeah, it's crazy. And I don't understand why they didn't just give them like a shared medal or something. They love giving shared medals out.
Yeah, it's whatever.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? I ain't the IOC and I have no plan to ever be them.
Yeah. So this loss in this controversial call went on to be known to be called Bottlegate.
Because of the throwing of the bottles, I assume?
Not only because of the throwing of the bottles, but because of this game, stadiums all across the league banned plastic bottles for their beer sales. A practice that is still common today.
Yeah, that makes sense. They've always been banned at sports arenas. I've known the reason why, but I didn't know there was like a direct correlation or if it was a precaution. I guess they had a horror story that made them do it.
Yeah, this is the horror story. Along with the Pacers and Pistons Malice in the Palace, these led to stricter alcohol policies at sporting events.
That makes sense. It's kind of badass if you were at the game, though, because that rule being in place is kind of like having a sign made because of something you did.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it's kind of cool. The rule is for you.
Yeah. So this also wasn't just a loss for the Browns. It was also a turning point. The team finished the season with a losing record and missed the playoffs. And Bottlegate became a dark stain on Browns history, joining infamous moments like the drive and the fumble.
Yes, indeed.
Those two will definitely... I'm gonna have an end segment just devoted on the Cleveland Browns because I'd always known they were cursed.
Oh, they're cursed.
But it's so much. It's so bad.
And they're cursed in a real way, not a Chucky Soup way.
No, it's like an actual curse. Like, some of the curses we talk about are obviously fake, and well, I mean, all curses
are fake,
but not the Cleveland Browns.
That's the one you believe in. That's the one you stand by.
That is one I will definitely stand by.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode.
You can find us on Twitter at FB Conspiracies, where we will post all the graphics and links we spoke about during this episode.
You can also reach us by email using fbconspiracies@gmail.com.
A special thanks to Blaze for the music.
If you enjoyed, consider leaving a review.
Join us next week for more football conspiracies.
Before I actually start, I want you to, like, instead of using the actual music, you want to do me a favor and put in, like, some sort of, like, sad music, like, I don't know, like some, like, rain sounds or, like, thunder. You'll see.